Hey, what's going on,
Yo,
everybody?
what's
Hey,
up?
what's going on, Godfrey? So we're back for another version of the Cheap Seats podcast. Got a smaller crew tonight. It's just Godfrey and myself right now. Might have a third join in. If not, that's all good because I can talk sports with Godfrey all night. But before we get
Yeah,
into our first question, how are you doing, Godfrey, tonight?
doing all right. Baseball season's upon us. You know,
Mm-hmm.
filling with my headphones, so I can hear everybody. They can hear me. It just sounds weird, and I don't know what the fuck is going on. But that's nobody's problem. But I can deal with it. I've had to deal with worse. But with that
Right.
being said, baseball season's upon us. Shohei Ohtani controversy. We got new tackling rules in the NFL. We got Deion Sanders. We got tons of stuff. We got the NCAA tournament. We probably won't. We might get into it. We might not. We'll see what happens with time we have left. But just a busy sports day in general. Kind of an unusually busy sports day for the time of year it is. I know
Yeah.
baseball is around the corner, but let's be honest. I'm a huge baseball fan, but it's probably the third best sport as far as popularity in the country. It's second best in my heart, but in
Mm-hmm.
overall, I would say probably ranks above hockey and behind basketball. That's just a guess at the statistics there. I'm pretty sure I'm dead nuts on accurate with it though. So a lot going on, and we got a couple questions for you guys to
Yes, we
answer.
absolutely. Um, see somebody's tuning in. So yeah, if you guys are new to the show, whatever, you can kind of let your opinion know in the comments section. If you have a topic you may want us to discuss on here, you can put that in the chat as well. We definitely appreciate that. Also, before we get into everything, this is the new location here with Integrity Sports. Usually it's on Sports Empire Network, but it's the same show, just a different network name. It's whatever you expected from the show, you're still gonna get that. So I
Where would
guess we
I
can
find
start.
this Integrity Sports at? I'm trying to look for it online. Do we have
So you can
a link
find
for the
the
listeners?
page. I mean I can definitely put that in the chat, but you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, X, Twitter, whatever we're supposed to refer to it. I still say Twitter. I guess you want to call it X, call it X. I believe that's the places so far. Um, in terms of live, we're not live on Facebook yet because Facebook has these crazy rules and everything that I can't keep up with. But um, if you do go to the page, the YouTube link is over there right now. I will drop,
Uh,
like I said, in the chat what the link is. Because what's going on, Key? I mean, I'll do that, Godfrey, while you explain our first topic.
I'm gonna go to the first topic. All right. So I'm kind of what I'm doing here is we're gonna go. I mean, it's fresh. The press conference just happened. So what I see out there is there's a lot of chatter about Otani, and I gotta say, man, people really love to see someone fall and have a demise and just like crumble, go down in America. Like it is like I don't know if it's a sickness we have or I'm just seeing people that are obviously anti-Dodger. I'm not a Dodgers fan, as you
Right.
can tell by what's on my head. I'm a baseball fan. I think Otani's generational, and I see a lot of people out here talking, saying like, "Oh, Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame." Kind of alluding to that, either making a joke lightheartedly,
Mhm.
superimposing or photographing Otani's face on Pete Rose's face. And being a Phillies fan, he's loved in this town. He's loved in Cincinnati. He's loved in as a Phillies fan. The old timers really love him, and I like the stories of him growing up. Is because he helped the Phillies win their first World Series title in 1980. The Big Red Machine. He's also the all-time hit leaders talking about Pete Rose. So a lot of people are like, well, they think Pete Rose should be in. I disagree. But we have a question for the public and a question for Kyle. Should Shohei Ohtani, if found guilty, to have gambled on baseball? Because remember, there is gambling that's legal, but not in California, where he
Right.
is located. Does that negate or negate what Pete Rose has done, or open the door for Pete Rose to be in the Hall of Fame now?
I would say no, because I wouldn't use Otani as a reason to reinstate Pete Rose. I would just use Pete Rose as a reason to as like a guideline of what to do with Shohei Otani if you were involved in terms of gambling. I would just say you would probably have to ban Shohei the same way Pete Rose was banned, not the other way around. Because if because of Shohei you reinstate Pete Rose, then it could kind of be looked at as then why'd you ban him in the first place? If all it took was another guy to get caught up in it to reinstate him, and I guess you would say maybe because Shohei personality wise, isn't on that level of Pete Rose because he put out there. Pete's a horrible person, and in terms of baseball, we know that we've kind of seen that with some of the writers and everything in terms of Hall of Fame, where if you aren't likable, they'll penalize you for it. And like I said, Pete Rose is probably on a different level, but yeah, I wouldn't use Otani as a reason to reinstate Pete Rose. What Pete Rose did was wrong. He needs to accept that. Fans of his need to accept that, and he just kind of has to deal with it.
Yeah. Um, you know, people like to pick and choose the history that maybe I don't know is okay with what their narrative they want to be or what they want it to
Mm-hmm.
be, right? Pete Rose has a lot of history, more than Shohei. Even if Shohei's felt 100% guilty of this, Pete Rose still usurps him as far as what he's done.
Yeah,
And a lot of people don't look
absolutely.
over the history. And I think Pete Rose, I don't even really respect Pete Rose's hit record, to be honest. I mean, I respect him as a player and his skills, but I'll go into that later on. I'm not really a
Mm-hmm.
Pete Rose hater, but Pete Rose doesn't do himself any favors. Um, and Otani, I just heard. Did you watch the press conference by any chance?
I did it, but I looked up what he said and everything like that. I mean, you can kind of fill us in if you watched it. I know it's like
Yeah,
12 minutes of him reading a statement or something like that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, basically, you would look at it and say, um, "Listen, here's the thing. It was very, I guess, corporate or stiff or press
Mm-hmm.
like. He doesn't speak very good English. And this is why I knew he was always going to be on the West Coast when the free agency happened. I laughed when they were like, "Oh, he's going to maybe go to New York Yankees or no, he's always going to be a Dodger." We knew it. Maybe a
Mm-hmm.
Giant as an outside chance. And where that's relevant is this guy, in my day job, I deal with people that may not speak English very well, and people try to take advantage of them. Now, I'm not saying he was taken advantage of. I'm not making an excuse for him, but I could see where things get lost in translation, and then he's aware of it now. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
thing that is a little weird is what bookie is giving someone a $4.5 million line if the guy's making 300 grand a year as an interpreter? There's a lot of fishy parts to the story. I don't know if Shohei knew. Maybe it was an embezzlement situation, but it sounded like he basically said he had no knowledge of it, and then he learned of it, and then then the lawyers for the Dodgers learned they were lied to, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the situation right now. I don't. My gut feeling is I don't think he gambled on baseball. It would be really weird for him to do that with the money he makes, and you know, I, maybe he didn't know, but I'm just saying. Let me be an interpreter for 300K. Well, listen, I think you might be able to if you can learn Japanese, you might have a shot at making over 150K at the minimum. I'm just saying. It's a valuable
Mm-hmm.
skill to have be fluent in a second language. So, just saying. I mean, I hear you on that though. 300K might it would be nice. So, he this guy probably had a gambling problem. Gamblers that are, have a gambling problem are degenerate gamblers, which is a Pete Rose type. He's a degenerate gambler. Still is a degenerate
Yeah.
gambler. And so when I see people out there saying like, "Whoa, well, Pete should get into the Hall of Fame now because people are gambling now. People are look at Shohei Tani. They're going to cover it up. They didn't cover it up for Pete. Let's. I need people to not ignore history. If Pete
Mm-hmm.
Rose came clean when he was found out, he'd probably be in the Baseball Hall of Fame right now. He lied and stuck to his lie, then changed his story 10 years later. Okay. I might be getting my dates wrong, but he lied at first. He stuck to this lie for years. I could say at least for a decade, possibly. Okay. There was a lot of investigations going on. They found his bookie's ledger through
Hmm.
United States Postal Service. I forget what they call that arm of the USPS that is their law. And I'm just saying, you know, this guy was managing a team that was under 500 when he left in '89. The very next year, the Reds win the World Series and sweep the defending champion Oakland A's. The very next year with relatively the same team. Now, the reason why it's different is Shohei Ohtani has not slept with an underage girl that was 15 when he was 35. That's providing court documents. A lot of people like to ignore that.
Hmm.
Me, as a Phillies fan, I've experienced that controversy firsthand. I was at the Philadelphia Phillies 1980 alumni game last year as a season ticket holder, and the crowd had mixed feelings. I did not like him being there, and the Phillies pulled a fast one by kind of doing it late and naming people late. And I just kind of, if you the only people that really feel sympathy for him are just these hardcore old school baseball fans. If you're a Reds fan or you're an old school Phillies fan, but a lot of younger
Yeah.
guys realize this guy's a scumbag. Okay, um, if he gambled, I'm not holding that against him. I believe, and this is speculation on my part, but a lot of people point to this. I think he bet on his own team while he was managing it. Um, because people want to speculate that Otani could have been like, "Oh, here's some insider information. This reliever's hurt. He's coming
Hmm.
in." And if that's being exposed and that happened with Otani, please suspend him. Don't save him. Don't guard him. If this investigation reveals that he did that, then yeah, he deserves everything that he gets or doesn't get as far as money wise. But as far as Otani goes, but it doesn't. One wrong doesn't make a right. Like let's just say Pete Huey is still who he is, and Otani is the worst degenerate we've ever heard of. They both should be banned. You know,
Yep.
with gambling being legal and it's not in California, uh, doesn't mean it can't be a problem, right? And people are stupid about it. Does he like to gamble? I don't know. I don't really know Otani that well. I just know him as a baseball player. I think a lot of us don't because he lives behind an interpreter wall, if you will, right? The guy is Japanese and he knows how to play baseball. Doesn't really need to know how to talk because, as you can see, the dude can ball. So
Hmm.
I think it's a shame because this is a generational talent I think we're witnessing when he's fully healthy. Right now, his arm's not healthy, but he can win you 15 games and hit you 40 home runs. You haven't seen that since Babe Ruth, um, which is impressive. I think that's probably one of the most exciting base. I've seen him play live. I saw him pitch in the World Baseball Classic and take on Mike Trout one on one. The perceived, which I think he's not best baseball player in the, you know,
Right.
Trout
Right.
fans remind me of LeBron James fans, but whatever. So, except with no championships or barely any playoff appearances, but whatever. Um, that being said, he struck him out, took him head on. That dude wants to win. He has the will to win. He has that Michael Jordan esque quality to him, I feel, and that's why he left the Angels. Um, but to stay on track here, no, Pete Rose, his situation is much different. I need people not to gloss over the history. And I know a lot of old timers are out there like, oh, whatever. He was the greatest. He had the best. He was a hustler. He
Hmm.
had the most hits. Well, I would like to take you through something. He would not have broken that hit record if it wasn't for the Reds trading for him from the Expos, who the Expos were giving him his last shot. Pete Rose was no longer Pete Rose. He extended a couple more years on his career to break that hit record as a player manager, retiring as a player manager in 1986. No one ever wants to talk about that, though. Can you imagine that? Like you go on as a player manager. It was a stump by the Reds.
Right.
This guy couldn't even make it on the Expos. They were hoping that he would have a veteran presence. I think he was hitting like 248 that year. You know what I mean? He wasn't on the Phillies anymore. He was able to get, I guess, past hit 4,000 with the Expos. And then he needed 192 more hits with the Reds. I mean, so Pete is a sneaky, sneaky individual. And Pete, I do not feel sorry for him. I don't want to make this about bashing Pete Rose, but I just don't see how the two are related. And am I Kyle? Am I crazy? Are you seeing that online? I see it everywhere in memes.
No, I definitely have seen it, and I feel like it's something that we kind of see periodically with Pete Rose, because usually around, when the MLB does their Hall of Fame class, you always see that little bit of murmur like, "Oh, how come Pete Rose can't get in?" So Pete Rose has become some like cult hero to, like you said, old school baseball fans who remember, him with the Reds, running over with the catcher in the All Star game and everything like
Which
that.
was a dick move, by the way. People want to celebrate that. That was a dick move by him. He ruined the guy's career. He's a dick.
Uh, right, but everybody looked at it as, well, that was just Pete Rose hustling in a game that didn't mean anything because he's just that kind of athlete. I'm with you. I feel like it's something that definitely needs to stop, because I also agree with you that it's kind of fishy that he's with the Reds or whatever, betting on stuff and everything like that. Even with Otani, like his interpreter, where he says like he didn't bet on baseball, that seems kind of hard for me to wrap my head around, because if he is as obsessed with gambling as he is, why would baseball be like the sport he stays away from? Because my whole thing was going into this with Otani was his statement. I assumed he was going to, go the way he did and say like, well, his interpreter kind of acted on his own. He didn't know about that. And that makes sense, because the last thing Otani needs, the last thing baseball needs, is for Otani to be wrapped up in this in terms of betting on games, because then it's Pete Rose 2.0. So now, him saying what he said, I don't think the story goes away, even though baseball would love it to. You have opening day, well, the like official opening day, 3 days away, and this happens today. That's going to overshadow probably opening day, because if the Dodgers play, what's everybody going to talk about? The
Baseball can't get
Otani
of its own
story.
way. Like
Exactly.
let's have
Yeah.
a opening day in the middle of the night, and not advertise it. Let's not advertise our best stars. Like baseball. So maybe this could be some good press for him. I don't know. I mean, there is an old saying that says there's no such thing as bad press.
True.
Maybe there's some controversy, but I was reading the comments on YouTube during the press conference, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's guilty." I wanted to like click on it, like, is that a Giants fan, or is that like
Hmm.
maybe he's guilty, maybe he's not. If he is, throw away the key as far as him not being able to play in baseball. But
Right.
I just want the Pete Rose thing. It's not even close. I mean, 1983, he batted 245 with the Phillies, played 151 games. Okay. Phillies went to the World Series that year, had 121 hits. The next year, he's with the Expos for 121 games. I'm sorry, am I saying that right? No, I think he did 121 games that year, batted 286. Now he was batting 259 with the Expos, and then he was batting 365 with the Reds. So he did okay. Next year, 85, 264, 107 hits, 119 games. The next year, 219, 52 hits, breaks the record, right? I believe he broke the record in 85, if I'm not mistaken. So all-time hit king, great player, right? I don't want to take that away from him, but he
Hmm.
definitely pulled. I don't know. Bruce Smith kind of took his career a little bit longer than it should have, and the Pete Rose definitely did that, and he was only able to do it because the Reds traded for him, and he was a player manager. So to me, it's not the same thing. It doesn't negate it. You throw away the key, and I just see it all over out there, and it drives me mad. I'm like, no, it's not the same thing. And when you look at it, I've always been annoyed by these staunch Pete Rose supporters. Oh, Sheriff, he belongs in the Hall of Fame. If no, he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
If you think he shouldn't be in the Hall, he should be in the Hall of Fame, then Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. Okay.
Completely agree. Yep.
Now Barry Bonds, you'll say he sinned against the game for steroids. Well, Rose sinned against the game by betting on the game while he played it in the 80s, which is even more shady. And he was a degenerate. He loved college basketball. And we both know how fluky college basketball can be. and how, especially in the 80s and the 90s, there was point shaving scandals with college basketball. You're going to tell me that Rose didn't leave a reliever in a little bit later if he was down big to the bookie? This is they have this ledger,
Hmm.
And the thing about him is he lies. Okay, he lies time and time again. He's been given time to come clean. He looked at reinstating him maybe a couple years ago, right? And he said he still likes to gamble. I'm like, okay, so Jim Dowd, all right, and the guy's worth $3 million, by the way, so he's not hurting.
Hmm.
Jim Dowd, I believe Pete Rose wanted to come after this guy because he said, you know, something about suing him for defamation, and it came out in court documents pretty much that he had a inappropriate relationship with a 15-year-old girl. So, I don't think he should ever be in the Hall of Fame. And if anybody gambled on the sport while playing it, I don't think they should be in the Hall of Fame either.
Yeah,
I
I agree with that. And plus, I mean, not to cut you off, but looking at kind of the way social media and everything has latched onto this story, what you're also starting to see is people looking at certain games Otani played in where he may have struggled, and now they're trying to link that with, oh, did he bet on this game? Was he throwing it and stuff like that? That's also a dangerous kind of game to play, but it is social media, so we kind of know what goes on there. But imagine if Pete Rose did what he did today. The ledgers and everything that you talked about, those would be all over the place, and maybe some of the people who are behind him so much would change their mind. Luckily, he did it when it was kind of like, eh, who was really monitoring that in terms of fans and everything like that. And I think another thing I'll be working in Otani's favor is for all that we've seen from Otani, seems like a guy who keeps to himself, doesn't really, go out of his way to anger anybody or anything like that. Because, like you said, Pete Rose was, a guy who was caught, lied about it, and continued to lie about it. So, public opinion, maybe Otani doesn't suffer the same fate as some do with Pete Rose. Because, like I said, once the games get going and, Otani's out there launching home runs, this story might go by the wayside. At least, once again, that's what baseball would like to happen. And also, like you said before, baseball's really, really bad about getting in their own way. And, the bad publicity being good publicity thing, I think that does work to an extent. But I feel like even before this, Otani might have been one of the very few baseball players that were probably recognizable. One, because he has a global reach, which definitely helps him out. Because, like Mike Trout, I say this all the time. If Mike Trout walked down the street, I may not know that it's actually Mike Trout, much as if I heard him talk, because I don't know if I've ever heard Mike Trout actually speak. But I feel like if Otani walked down the street, I'd be like, that's Shohei Otani. It's kind of
Yeah,
hard not to know him. But in terms of their other stars, yeah, baseball does a horrible job marketing.
yeah. So the Pete Rose thing, it was in sworn testimony, and part of it was a defamation lawsuit against the investigator Jim Dow for accusing him of rape in the 1970s. He thought she was 16 and she was 14 or 15. So yeah, that's your hero right there that you're trying to defend. That's all I got to say
Right.
about that. Like give
Yeah.
me a break. Like that. I don't I don't feel bad for these type of dudes. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna make that something that's gonna be your hill you're gonna die on, um, be my guest. I don't get people. You want to die on that hill, die on that hill, but at least be truthful about it.
Hmm.
And I can't stand people. I just can't. So
I got you.
it it is what it is. But we got your question coming up, so
Absolutely.
throw that out there.
Let's see. What's going on, Jory? So yeah, I wanted to talk about the Deion Sanders interview he did on, I think it's Million. Make sure I get the name right. $1 million worth of game podcast. where he was talking about Shadur Sanders, his son Travis Hunter, the two big names at Colorado. And now this has kind of become a verb, I guess, or whatever. He said he would advise them to pull an Eli, basically alluding to if teams in the top five, because he said both those guys should go top five. If the teams that are up there aren't a select, I guess, few organizations that he feels like they would be successful in, then they should just request a trade. And then on top of that, there was the talk about Caleb Williams with the Bears. This wasn't Dion, but it's still related. I think this was on Get Up, and they basically said because of who the Bears are, Caleb Williams should basically pull an Eli and request a trade or make sure that they don't draft him. I think the question here is should these, college kids have the right to pull an Eli? Because we know Eli Manning did it, John Elway did it before him. To kind of make sure that they get shoehorned into a situation that's perfect for them. Because I do think maybe the college landscape has created this where now you have NIL, you have transfer portal. So if a kid is sitting behind two guys at Alabama, he no longer feels like he has to, work to earn his spot. He just goes somewhere where he can just start right away. So do you think some of that has now filtered into the college athlete and we might see more players pull Eli's?
You might see more players pull Eli's, but I think it's pretty. I know it's his son,
Mm-hmm.
but is Shador Sanders really going to be a top 5 pick? Is that again? I could go with Travis Hunter. I could possibly see that, but has Shador showed enough to say he's a top 5 lock? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good point. Because
I mean,
Shadur's going to have a strong 2024, obviously, to even have that be part of a conversation. But I think the celebrity behind him is such that fan bases have probably put him up there already.
yeah. I mean, listen, if there's a guy that knows how to do it, it's Deion Sanders, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I don't really have a huge problem with it because I just feel like people aren't as angry when Eli Manning or John Elway does it. But then when Caleb Williams says something about it, which he didn't really, and
Mm-hmm.
then when Shador Sanders says something about it, then people are outraged. you know, um, I do get what he's saying. I don't blame them for doing it. And that's my point. Like putting your him in a position to succeed. I mean, listen, they didn't want to go to the Chargers, Eli Manning. The Colts, they didn't want to go there. Now, I think as those teams, they should not acquiesce to it and then trade them and get a good package. And
Okay.
I don't think the team should really acquiesce to it unless there's something that someone's willing to give up for them, right? I mean, that's where I'm going with that. Like if I'm the NFL teams, but I don't know if it's going to be something. I think you might hear people say it doesn't mean it's going to come true. I mean, Shador Sanders yeah, I think Travis Hunter has a better shot at being a top 5 pick than Shador Sanders, of the two. I mean, he looked okay last year. I mean, there's a lot of hype with the quarterback position. I mean, Caleb Williams, there's a lot of hype around him. So a lot of people say his pro day was mediocre, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
with the quarterback position, it really gets hyped up even more so than it did in back when Eli was drafted or even when John Elway was drafted. John Elway had something in his back pocket. He could go play baseball for the New York Yankees.
Right.
So, he had that going on. Now, I don't know if Dion's kids are as talented as he was, and he's a two-way player or a two-way sport person. So I don't think they're going to have that option. But Shador is going to have to show a little bit more. But so, I mean, your question, your heart of the question, or the heart of your question is, are we going to see that more? Um, I think you might see people stay in college a year later, but the
Okay.
NLI money still doesn't equal out first round pick top 5 money, right? So I think you'll see that more. I mean, there was whispers of Marvin Harrison Jr. doing that this year. Coming
Mm-hmm.
back out next year. he didn't end up doing it. Um, I do get these guys wanting to have a say in where they go. I mean, because who doesn't, right? Like, who wants to go work where they don't want to work, especially if it's in a bad situation? And I think maybe players, especially in the quarterback position, are getting smarter where they see like, oh, well, this coach runs this type of system. This really isn't conducive to my skill set and future success as a pro athlete, right? Because we do see that,
Hmm.
right? I mean, I know some people would disagree with me here, but Justin Fields is a great example. He got drafted. Coach got fired after that year. Then they put in a new coach. They started to look better toward the end of that year or the year before. This year they went 7-9, I believe, or did they go 6-10? I think they went 7-9 this year, and they fired their offensive coordinator. So essentially, he had zero stability, didn't get developed right, and
Hmm.
they fumbled the football so bad on his trade value. Now he's a backup at Pittsburgh, which I think will be the eventual starter, which I think was a wise move by Pittsburgh because if Russ truly doesn't have anything in the tank, you could fall back on Justin Fields. Um, but you know, he was not perceived to be a top 5 pick. So I think for you to have that cachet, you got to be like a top 5 pick at a power position, right?
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't mean I think it's going to happen more. I think so. I think it will. I think they're going to try people on for size and like, hey, I won't play here. I mean, but they said that about Caleb because his dad was giving off LeVar Ball vibes, and people were making it like he wasn't going to go to Chicago, and really, that's not what's happening here. He's going to be a Chicago Bear. I mean, that's a foregone conclusion now, right? So, um, I don't, I don't know if these players, I would think the two positions that would probably position themselves that way would be running back or maybe running back, receiver, and quarterback. Because, if you're a receiver, I see the position that never makes sense to me. If I'm a wide receiver, pro or um, college coming into a pro situation, I'm looking at who the
Hmm.
quarterback is, right? Like,
Right.
do I want to
Yeah.
go play with, I don't know, Mitchell Trubisky, or do I want to go play with, you know, I don't know, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, um, Kirk Cousins, maybe, right? Or do I want to go to a situation where the quarterback situation is untenable, right? Like, people are not down on Kyler Murray right now, but Marvin Harrison Jr. maybe he might be like, well, can he get me the ball all the time? Is my route tree going to be
Hmm.
limited because of what the throws he makes? So, and in NFL terms, I always wonder about receivers that take. I know you got to take the most money, but are you going to actually make that money because you're going to end up getting cut after year one? I mean, the best example I always bring up is look what Robert Woods turned into after he got out of Buffalo and then went to LA. Completely different player, right?
Yeah.
Always was fast,
Hmm.
always had the physical tools, but it's really predicated on the quarterback. Not so much with running back and the quarterback. You're going to get 2-3 years if you're that. You're going to get 3 years minimum if you're that high of a pick. Minimum, probably 4 years. Um, you know, but if I'm a quarterback and I want to get that mega deal, I don't blame them. Or if it became a trend where they're like, I'm not going to a bad situation. I mean, if someone said, pretend Bryce Young's not at the Panthers anymore. If someone said, "I
Hmm.
want to go to I don't want to go to the Panthers," will we blame them?
No. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. Because
Yeah,
yeah,
I
because
mean,
of the owner and everything that we've seen. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like, oh my god, like who's, I mean, to me, m- if I had a son or a brother or a nephew, where I was an agent and they're interviewing him, I'd be like, listen, you need to interview them, right? You
Hmm.
need to interview them, like they're whether you want to work for them or not, right? And then we'll go from there. I mean, listen, Eli, they didn't like the Chargers organization for whatever reason, which is ironic because Archie Manning played in a shit organization at the time, which was the Saints, and they could become the Aints.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, maybe Eli's like, you know what? I don't want my son to go through what I went through, you know. I guess he didn't get that feeling with the Colts with Peyton, you know, or maybe he felt like Peyton would be good wherever he went. Maybe not Eli so
Hmm.
much. I mean, that could be a factor that they're not talking about. Um,
Good point.
John Elway. I don't know what the Colts. They didn't want to play there for some reason. They ended up going to Denver, and the rest is history there. But I think it could become a trend with the NIL. Am I saying it wrong, or is it the NIL or NLI? It's NIL, right?
No, yeah, yeah, NIL. Yep.
I do think it could be something that could, start to pop up more in the top 5 picks. But the teams are going to have to deal with that. They're going to have to. They're going to have to kind of sell them on that. And if they don't want to be there, trade the draft rights, right? Um, it went down to the wire with John Elway as far as trading the draft rights. And I think, ironically enough, if I'm not mistaken, Ernie Accorsi was involved in the John Elway trade, and then he was involved in the Eli Manning trade on the other side of that. Ironically enough, so I think he was the GM in Baltimore at the time. Isn't that ironic? Not a lot of people know that.
Yeah, I did not know that. I did not remember
Yeah,
that.
if I'm looking at him up, because he was the Baltimore Colts general manager from 82 to 83. And then
Okay.
New York Giants general manager from 98 to 96 or '06, both both the years of that trade. So I remember seeing a story on it on NFL Network, about that trade.
Hmm.
So yeah, man, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Well, we'll say that also. I think Bo Jackson did it where a team was going to draft him. He said, "If you draft me, I will go play baseball." And he actually went and played baseball for a couple of years. But I mean,
That's true. But Bo was
I, I mean, Bo was
so
just
talented
crazy.
at both. It
Yeah,
sucks that he broke his hip. I mean,
I know.
I've seen Bo Jackson make out of these world plays in baseball, and yeah, I mean, that's a guy like, what if he never got injured? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what if?
Yep.
But
Yeah.
Bo did do it. You're right. I forgot about that. Um,
But yeah, I mean, and if you look at it that way, you can understand that. Now, for Hunter and Sanders, I agree. Hunter probably is more likely to be in that position. Sanders, because of the quarterback, is going to depend on how teams finish. What quarterback position, what quarterback situation needs him, and everything like that. Whatever. But it's almost like if we get too many players to start doing it, then it turns into why do we have a draft necessarily?
mhm.
Because I remember this was floated out like a couple of years ago. I heard somebody or somebody come up with this, and it was like, why not just let these kids be free agents and then teams sign them or whatever? Like if we got to a point where that was the way college guys end up on NFL teams, that would be an issue because they would just team up, go somewhere or whatever. Obviously, with
Yeah,
salary cap money would have to factor in, but I
if
feel like you don't want
basketball,
something like
i-
that.
yeah, if football became like basketball that way, I would be out. Like, it's a big problem I have with basketball. Like, you sign a contract and then 2 years you want out of it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
okay, that's fine. But and the teams make it work somehow in the NBA, but they have the worst CBA in all sports. And if football became that, where that happened all the time, it would be untenable. And the thing is it keeps the balance in the league. That's why there's parity in the NFL. I mean, I guess not with the
hmm
Chiefs winning 2 in a row. Is there really parity? But or 3 out of 4 or something like that. Um, is there really parity in the NFL? Um, and that's enables teams to get better. I mean, so I do think they're not going to bend to that because that's part of the beauty of it, right? And that's what makes it matter. Because then you don't want teams in the NFL to be the Pittsburgh Pirates. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
If you're gonna do that, you're gonna have to have like, you know, I mean, baseball in some markets needs a floor for how much they have to spend. And
hmm
I mean, but if they did that, it would be. I don't think it would be good for the sport and the interest of the fan. you know, to go to the highest bidder. I mean, and it would be anti what the union was about with these rookie contracts too, because you're not going to be able to outbid them. You know what I mean? So, I I I think if I'm the NFL owners, I'm not going to abide by it. Now, if I was a running back with the way they get
Hmm.
paid, although they got paid more than we thought they were going to get paid in this offseason, right? I
Yeah.
didn't see
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift getting that much money. I definitely didn't see the Eagles signing Saquon Barkley for that much money. Um, but if I was a running back and I saw myself going to a team where like they stink, I'm like, I might do that. That's the position where I might do it because you listen, it's there's not many running backs that are productive past age 28.
Sure.
It just doesn't happen. So if there's one position in the NFL, if I'm an agent and I want to hack it, and I've talked about this before, I want to hack the system. I'll say, don't draft me. I'm not gonna sign with you. M- let me go in as an undrafted free agent. So I mean, now would it happen?
Right.
Probably not. But then I would say, well, if I'm the agent and you want to bet on yourself, listen, you know, do a 1 year contract. But then they want that extra fifth year option. So, that's the only position where I could see it maybe becoming more of a problem. But I just think there's so many running backs out there, and with offensive lines being the way they are, that I just don't know if, it will work. They'll go get someone else. You know what I mean? Quarterback is really
Hmm.
going to have the most leverage, but I don't know. I mean, listen, there's, you know, JJ McCarthy is going up the boards now, and I didn't think he was a top 5 QB. Um, but listen, Mac Jones, all of a sudden, the Niners are talking about drafting him at 3, and they missed twice. They didn't get him, and they took Trey Lance, and they could have took Justin Fields. I guarantee Justin Fields will still be the quarterback of the Niners if he got drafted to that team. Um,
Yeah,
you're gonna tell me
I
Brock
agree with
Purdy
that.
has all the physical tools Justin Fields does? Okay, sure.
Right. Right.
What you want to believe that? Be my guest. But Justin Fields would take off for a 50-yard rip where Brock Purdy's getting a 12-yard run. If it's
Hmm.
totally, and that's what they envisioned with Trey Lance, but it didn't work out. Um, yeah, it's a crazy question. I mean, I don't disagree with you. I mean, do you think that Dion is just bluffing, or he's sticking to his word because he's doing this before hit the season that is really gonna
Right.
determine their worth?
I guess he's just putting it out there now because I think part of this where you might put on the team's responsibility is if you're at the combine, you interview a player, and you get the sense, or he flat out tells you, don't draft me. At that point, as a team, you're like, do we call his bluff, draft him, see if he comes to training camp and we convince him that this is where he wants to be? Or we draft him, he's disgruntled, and now we're dealing with teams who will find out that player's disgruntled. So now, whatever we get in the trade will never be the value that we expect. So I kind of think if a player tells their team, you're drafting one, I don't want to play here, that team needs to move on to plan B at that point. Whether you trade out of the pick and have that be somebody else's problem to try to convince that player to go there, or what. Because I don't know if it's worth it when you're looking at a draft that's a crapshoot anyway. Because yeah, everybody's talking about Caleb Williams is like a can't, well, not necessarily can't miss, but like the best prospect in this draft. We don't know that. He could show up in Chicago,
Yeah,
whatever. They,
I don't know if I believe that about him being a can't miss prospect.
right, but the way that it's positioned is like
He's given me
Caleb
more
Williams has
reasons to
always
believe that
been number
he's
one.
a bust than he hasn't given me reasons. And some people might disagree with that, but
Hmm.
college football doesn't impress me. What you did in college doesn't impress me. I mean, look at Bryce Young. I was on the fence about it last year, and I was like, Young, Stroud, Young, Stroud. My gut said Stroud, but I said maybe Young has something to show,
Hmm.
and it's not even close. You know, And everybody, a lot of people were saying that Young was the consensus number one last year. The consensus number one. It's not even
Hmm.
close. It's not a it's not a matter of does he have a better team around him. He does not look good. I'm sorry. There's now maybe the new guy makes something happen with him, but that is going to be an epic all-time miss if Caleb becomes good. Not only did you draft a quarterback, you lost the first pick because your team stunk so bad, and then the team that traded you got that quarterback next year. So that could be an all time. But I mean, a lot of these quarterbacks you really don't know. I mean, Bryce Young was good in college, but that's a different game. The windows are smaller. The game is faster, And I don't know. I mean, when I look at Shador Sanders, devil's advocate here. I would love to see him be successful. Part of me is rooting
Hmm.
for Dion, but I like the whole like Jackson State thing and then going to Colorado. But part of me now thinks like, is this just him taking his kid through the journey of being a quarterback? And is he going to leave Colorado once his kids are gone? You know what I mean? And then jump to the NFL, right? Is he gonna be the coach that takes
Yeah.
him? Is he you know what I mean? Like, and Dion needs to have a successful year to do that. Shador Sanders was the most sacked quarterback in college football last year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Um, I believe, yeah, he's thrown for 10,000 yards, 97 touchdowns, only 13 years. So he was the most sacked quarterback in the country last season. It's pretty bad. Now,
Hmm.
they didn't have a lot of good offensive linemen. Hopefully, they do this year. You would think they have some good NIL money with Sanders and ticket sales and the popularity of the school. So you would
Hmm.
think that would play into that, but um, Shador might have the skill set. He could be right. I mean, he's going to have to rep his kid, but I don't know. Some people disagree, but part of me wants to see him do well because I want to see Dion just go in there and do well too. I mean, I started watching college football more than I normally did because of him. So, um, you know, Kuiper ranks him as the third best NFL ready QB. That was in November of 23. So there's Shiloh and Shador, and then there's Travis, right? What is Shiloh? Is Shiloh
Yes.
Shiloh's not a quarterback. Is Shiloh a receiver?
Oh,
Oh,
that's a
he's a
good question.
safety. He's a
I think.
safety.
Oh, he's a safety. Okay. I know Hunter
Yeah,
is the
a
two-way
receiver and
player.
a
He plays
quarterback,
wide receiver and cornerback. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's good at
I
both.
forgot about Shadow.
Can you
He
play
is.
both?
Yes.
Can you play both in the NFL? Can you play cornerback and receiver? That's a
I was
lot of
trying to think
snaps.
who was the last one to do it.
Like in football in general, or that position.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been like extreme examples, like
Concrete
Patriots
Charlie,
one year.
Chuck Bednarik,
Well, I mean, the Patriots had a situation where they were lacking on secondary help, and they threw
Ty
like
Law,
Julian Edelman and Troy Brown out there, and they
Troy
played
Brown.
both
Yeah, that's right.
ways. So it can be done. I mean, I don't know how many teams probably would try it though, because their fear would be if he's a really good wide receiver and he gets hurt playing cornerback, then that affects the offense too much, or vice versa.
I think it's gonna have to be like Dion and when he was a pro, and Dion did okay as a receiver. I think that they put him in like a Devin Hester role or a fourth receiver on an offense maybe, and then
Hmm.
he's gonna get limited snaps, and then he's full time cornerback.
That's right. Yeah, Devin Hester did come up as a corner, and then he kind of struggled there. They kind of stuck him at wide receiver. He was decent there, and then he kind of just became specialty,
Didn't he make the
returner.
Hall of Fame this year?
I know he was. Was he eligible?
I'm pretty sure he made it.
Honestly, can I'm gonna say yes. I can't remember the Hall of Fame class to be honest with you.
Um, yeah. So I the reason why I'm thinking of that is there's a cornerback that's an all time great, and you could call me biased because I'm an Eagles fan. He was also a Raider that hasn't gotten in yet. His name's Eric Allen. and I believe
Okay.
Devin Hester is going to get inducted to the Hall of Fame before him. Um, Steve McMichael, Devin Hester, Julius Peppers have been elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Give me a break. Yeah, he was exciting. He's one of the
Hmm.
best return men of all time. Let him in, but that's too soon for him to get in. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. He's a return guy. Eric Allen is an all-time great, and I'm not just saying that because he was an Eagle. Like you could look up, the stats where he's at, and he's gotten snuffed every year. You
Well, I
know,
mean that happens with certain guys because for whatever reason, as a Patriots fan, I saw Richard Seymour have to go through a couple of years before he got in. I thought he was a really good player. So it's like it's just a weird thing with certain guys in certain position groups that they kind of get pushed along. I mean, Devin Hester, what he had going for him was didn't he break Dion's record in terms of return touchdowns? So I think with like a bit of recency bias, that probably helped him get in. And that's not to say he isn't a Hall of Famer, but I can see what you're saying that maybe he's a guy who, maybe it takes him a couple of years to get in, and you wouldn't have an issue with that. But
yeah.
I mean, like I said,
So
Eric Allen's a guy
Allen
who
made 5 Pro Bowls, one first
okay,
team All Pro in 7 years with the Eagles. Made a 6 Pro Bowl with the Saints. He finished his 14th career with the Eagles, Saints, and Raiders. 54 interceptions. Okay,
mm-hmm,
eight pick sixes. That's a lot. People don't realize that's a lot.
yep.
4 postseason INTs and a ninth pick six. Or yeah, and so there are 23 cornerbacks and 43 defensive backs in the Pro Football only team. Only 4 of them had 58 career interceptions and 9 interception returns for touchdowns in their entire career. So I state my case correctly. Eric Allen should be in the Hall of Fame over Devin Hester. Kicker. I mean, look, man, he was great, but you're right. It's recency bias. Come on, come on. Like
Mm-hmm.
let him get in a veteran committee. Like, stop it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That just made me think of that because I'm thinking of Devin Hester, and then I'm thinking of cornerbacks. So we'll see. I think college football is changing for the better. Some people would disagree. I know the NIL is a problem, and I think there's some things that need to be kinked out. But you know, did, I really think if they want things to be fixed, then they need to start doing minor league football. you know, and guess what? Kids has that option now. I mean, the problem is your body has to develop, right? But so you're gonna have to probably play a couple years in college, maybe, But you could go to it's called I don't know what the XFL is called now, but is it the
Oh,
USFL?
UFL.
UFL.
Yep.
You can go to the UFL. So, are you gonna watch that this year?
Yeah, I feel like I kind of tuned in, not necessarily like 100% in on like XFL and USFL, but I would watch it from time to time. So yeah, I'll probably do the same thing with the UFL. I mean, kind of like what you're saying. I wouldn't mind seeing the UFL develop to the point where it's a reason, well, not a reason, but like an option for kids who don't get drafted to go and develop, kind of like what the G League is to the NBA. Now, obviously, the UFL is not going to have a team for every NFL team because they need to establish a fan base and everything like that first. But I feel like it's something that could be used to the NFL's benefit.
I
I think
know I
Anthony
know
said
some of
Rodney
these
Harrison
players.
gets snubbed.
I know some of these players are very smart in their academics, and some of them have a good college academic career, but that's the outlier. I mean, Shador Sanders, take a guess what his major is. What do you think it is?
I mean, I guess like the stereotypical one that you see would be like, I don't know, communications or something like that.
Close, sociology.
Okay.
I mean, all right, fine. You know what I mean? But you know what?
Yeah.
It ain't pre med. You know what? It's like. I mean, there are some people that do that, but I'm just saying let's not act like these guys are here to become, you know, more polished as educators or as students. Most of them are here to be, it's a stepping stone to the
to fill
NFL.
that time until they get drafted. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's, and that's what makes me laugh. You know what I mean? I know people that went to major universities like Florida University, for example, and I always joke with them. I was, yeah, did you ever see any athletes in homeroom or study hall? Like, it's real courses. Like, I don't know. It's just funny how it is. But I mean, uh, yeah, we'll see, man. I think that's messed up. I mean, so do you? I know we're probably ending. So do you think Otani's guilty? I mean, it does look a little shady.
I mean, I would sit here and say that there's probably more to it with him than the statement kind of leads on. And look, I kind of get where his stance is like, oh, the interpreter's doing his thing. I'm out here trying to play baseball, and I hate what he did, but it's not me. Because if Otani were to come out and say, I threw a couple bucks on a game here or there, the amount of things he's in line to lose would be astronomical. Now, it's not to say I'm assuming that they're going to keep investigating. And if we do find out that he did something, and now this whole thing is just him lying to save face, I mean,
Mhm.
it might end up being worse than Pete Rose necessarily, only because of Otani is such a likable guy, and if he just does
Yeah.
a 180 like this would be almost, I mean, Deshaun Watson esque. Because remember, before the Deshaun Watson stuff, he was seen as like a really good guy in the NFL, and then it's like massage here, massage there, and it's like, well, what's going on? And now it's just like he's unlikable. So, for Otani's sake, I hope what he said is right, but I don't know. I find it weird. Your interpreter gets that deep into the hole, and you knew zero about it.
Why
You had to
can't he
know
just go to
something.
Vegas and place bets there if he wanted to do that? Is that illegal? I don't know how
I
baseball
mean,
works, but
yeah,
like in the
I
NFL,
don't
you can
gamble like
gamble,
this.
but
So I
you
don't know.
can't do it on like, you know, NFL property, like at the stadium or the practice facility,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
that's how they got in trouble in the line. So, I mean, I don't get it. Like you have private jets, like if you can do that and you really want to gamble, just I don't know, go fucking fly to Macau or go to Vegas. You know what I mean? Like big gambling centers in the world. Like do something like that. You know what I mean? Like that's what I don't get about these situations. And the only thing is when I read into it, the thing that people keep saying is if he what guy bookie gives 4.5 million credit line to a guy who only makes 300 grand, right? And so that makes me think like was the bookie in on it? Did he know that he was stealing from him, or did he not? And Otani was in on it. I mean, listen, if the guy's in trouble for illegal bookmaking in California, you know what I mean. That's the thing. You know what's funny? There's a show out right now with God, what's the comedian, the Italian guy? It's called Bookie, I believe, and there's a second season for it. And the story is he's a bookie in California, and you know what I mean. And I forget what it's called. Oh man,
Hmm.
Maniscalco is his name.
Oh, Sebastian Maniscalco. Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, Manical. I know. I can't pronounce his last name,
yeah.
but I know
Season
what you're
two is
talking about.
coming
Yeah.
out, and it's renewed for season 2 on Max. And it's kind of funny because his character is uh he's a bookie in California. So and it's current day. So he's dealing with, that aspect of it being illegal. Um
Interesting.
but my retired FBI uncle told me is that, the FBI will get involved if there's a lot of money, um, maybe connected to a politician, or if there's something high profile. And this would be high profile, very high
Hmm.
profile. So did he get pinched and say, I might have someone for you? You know, I don't know. But and you could go so many different ways with this. So I think a lot's got to come out. Um, and I don't think people are going to be able to hide it if they want to. And I can understand how people think it's going to get covered up, but don't get into this. Well, it's covered up, so it's really worse, and Pete Rose should be reinstated because that's not covered up. Blah 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 blah. Not the same thing. I don't think you're going to be able to really cover this up at this point when federal
Hmm.
investigators are involved. It's going to be a little bit harder,
I agree. Yeah.
and that's the reality of the situation. It would be awful because I was looking forward to my Phillies beating the Dodgers in the playoffs with all that firepower.
Right.
Because that happens to the Dodgers every year. But
Hmm.
Shohei Ohtani's a gamer. He's not Clayton Kershaw, so I think that gives him a formidable number. But he can't pitch this year.
Right.
He could affect the
Right.
game more from the mound. They brought him in to close the World Baseball Classic. I
Hmm.
was there. You could affect the game more from the mound in that situation than you can batting 4 to 5 times a game.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So, they're really not going to get the full Otani until like next year. You know what you'll probably see? They'll probably have him only pitch in the playoffs or toward the end of the year. Watch them do something like that. You know what I mean? Save his arm for that. I could totally see that. He's not pitching at best until early July of next season. That's my prediction. Like post
Hmm.
All-Star break. And if they could do that, they're gonna do it. Because the Dodgers, I mean, they have so much talent on their team, but they got smoked by the Diamondbacks. So did the Phillies,
Yeah.
right? I
Yep.
mean, that's baseball, right? And
Hmm.
Clayton Kershaw stinks in the playoffs, and he's not going to be back to the middle of the year as well. They're saving him probably for a postseason run. So it's going to be interesting. But Otani is the star that baseball needs.
Yep.
Baseball needs stars. They have it. They need to market them correctly, and this is probably their worst nightmare. They got the biggest name with the most international appeal in one of the biggest hit markets they have, and this is the worst thing. So I was wondering, how did they find out? Was it what were the Angels bitter and they leaked it? Like
That's
this
a really
guy,
good question.
yeah. How
Yeah.
who how did they find out if this was going on for a while? And Otani's interpreter. This is what's weirder about it. Apparently, he lied about his high school. You know, yeah. So it says Otani's former interpreter in Epi, uh, Missouri, had inaccuracies in his public biography. For years, the Los Angeles Angels media guy listed Missouri, I'm just butchering his name, Mizorha, as having
Hmm.
graduated from the University of California, Riverside in 2007. And he
Yeah, I
spent his
just saw
spring
that.
training in 2012 working for the New York Yankees as an interpreter for Japanese pitcher Hideki Ojojama. Also, multiple news reports noted that he served as Ogajami's interpreter in 2010 when with the Red Sox.
Yeah, I saw that. That was a lie too. But so then, how does this guy get this job as Otani's interpreter? See, that's one of the things about baseball. Like, I don't necessarily understand. Like, does Major League Baseball set these international players up with guys that they vet out, and then they say, okay, you're interpreting for who, or do they have Otani pick this guy? Because if he's going to lie about the school he went to and teams he previously worked for, how did he get a chance to get attached to Shohei Otani?
It's a
Doesn't
good
make any
question.
sense.
Have you ever seen Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck?
Yeah. Hmm.
So that's kind of a reverse situation. They gave him an interpreter. The
Yeah.
interpreter was saying things that he didn't want him to say, and he's like, you say exactly what I want you to say. And the guy was trying to help him,
Hmm.
right? More of underrated baseball movie, by the way. Mr. Baseball is an underrated baseball movie. If you haven't seen one,
Yeah.
it's a
It was a
top
pretty
10
good
for
movie.
me.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and it's kind of a reverse situation. I mean, like it seemed like the club in that movie provided the interpreter for him. Um, but does Major League Baseball do that? And this guy. I mean, did he not work for the Red Sox? Was that a lie too?
Yeah. The story I saw said it. Baseball opened an investigation. Since then, they learned that he appeared to have lied on his resume about graduating from Cal Riverside and also lying about working for the Red Sox and the Yankees.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, so Major League Baseball probably is not doing the vetting process or whoever his people are. So basically, I know for one of the jobs that I worked, whatever you put on your resume, they will verify. I know that from
Mm-hmm.
being a hiring manager. I had a girl not get hired one time because she on there she worked for a Philly pretzel factory and the damn place was out of business and she couldn't prove it. I thought that was out of control, ridiculous. I
Mm-hmm.
had a situation where I put my high school on there and they wanted me to get my fucking high school diploma for them. Now I kind of lost it and I got it through the state, the high and but they wanted me to prove that even though I had a year of college, which they proved on my resume. Hence me
Mm-hmm.
being able to have, a high school diploma, a year of college, which they proved, but they still wanted me to prove that. So my point is there are companies and things in place where you can have a guy show up with that resume, and then that could be vetted, especially since it's in the same organization. So yeah, Major League Baseball definitely dropped the ball on this, and they weren't taking care of their foreign players. You know
Right.
that is that and that is a question that should really be asked of them, right? I mean, how the hell does that happen? I want to work for a Major League Baseball team. I'm thinking about firing up a resume. You know what I mean? And say that I'm an interpreter for like a rare language or something. So, I mean, you know, th- he accuses longtime interpreter of stealing 4.5 million to cover his illegal gambling debts. Though only after Town reported that Otani had agreed to give Mazzara the money. Since then, Mazzara has been fired, and MLB has opened an investigation into the matter. So,
Yeah, 'cause I
yeah,
saw a
so
sentence and it's
that's
like,
weird.
Pani fire him? Did Major League Baseball fire him? Because if Major League Baseball fired him, then Major League Baseball hired him, which once again leads to how does a guy who put a college down that he never went to, because I saw that UC Riverside has no record of the guy even being at the school at any point. And then the Red Sox came out and said, yeah, this guy's never worked for us, but he somehow puts that on there. And like I said, the Yankees said the same thing. He never worked for them as well. So somebody needs
Here's
to
the
kind
other.
of
Here's
fill
the,
the gap how he ends up as Otani's interpreter after all that was a lie.
so here's the other thing too, right? And they might check resumes, right? That's totally
Mm-hmm.
possible. But when you're dealing with, you need a specialized language. You're trying to get them in there for that skill set, right? So you were like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, he speaks Japanese. Who gives a shit? That's probably, you know what I mean? Like, that's probably what it is. Like, I mean, I'm looking it up right now. How many people speak Japanese in the United States that are not from Japan? How many do you think it is?
I'm assuming like a percentage wise, probably kind of low. I don't know. If I'm thinking like
So
schools and
this is
thinking
what I
just
have.
Japanese, it was like
There are nearly
5%. Oh.
120 million Japanese speakers in Japan. It was surveyed there are 7 million Japanese speakers spread in different countries such as United States, United Kingdom, Brazil, Philippines. So, Japanese speakers in the United States, you got California, Hawaii, New York, Illinois, Washington, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so basically, you know, that's a small pool. More than 90% of the Japanese speakers are Japanese people living in Japan. That's a small pool. If you divide that amongst the world, that remaining 10%, and then are they of age that they could be an interpreter and travel around? Are they over 18? Are they retired and senior citizens? Do they speak Japanese? Are they disabled? Like, are they can they do that? You know what I mean? So the pool gets smaller and smaller. So if he says he can speak Japanese and you're hearing him speak Japanese and he checks out with the Japanese people, I guess you don't give a shit where it's from. I mean, this is Major League Baseball. I mean, they draft kids out of high school. They sign
Yeah,
15-year-old kids that just hit puberty in the Dominican Republic. Like, I mean, the Phillies signed Ronald Acuna's brother to a future reserve deal. I think he's 12 years old. You know,
yeah,
so I mean, do they check it? I tell you what, they will now,
right,
or they better.
absolutely.
I mean, because the FBI is asking the same question. Did you run a background check on him? You didn't. You
That seemed
know,
like basic though, and
yeah,
why they
and
wouldn't. And
that's
also,
basic.
Otani's not the only Japanese player. So now, do we have to start looking at other Japanese interpreters to check their background, see if they're legit?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, where is he? He's originally from Japan. Like, where is this guy from? Like, you know, I feel like
I, I
people
believe he
keep
said
saying
he
this
was
is like
born in
Catch Me If You
Japan.
Can.
I think he said he was born in Japan and moved to the States when he was a really early, young age.
Yeah, yeah. So the lore of Otani and Mizari's friendship based around them both joining the Hikato Nippon Ham Fighters in 2013. Otani as a rookie, first overall pick, and Mizora as an interpreter for the team's English-speaking players. Before that, Mizora was said to have worked his first job at baseball as an interpreter for the Red Sox for pitcher Hideki Okajima. Am I saying that right? 07 to 11.
Oh, Kojima, yeah, okay.
Okajima. The Red Sox released a statement from that Mizora had never worked for them in any way. So Mizora apparently was that good of an interpreter either, if you believe John Heyman of New York Post. That makes a lot of sense now. Um, he couldn't have worked for the Yankees either after the Red Sox. The Angels media guy stated that Mizora continued to interpret for Okijama with the New York Yankees in 2012. As the Athletic notes, there's one problem with that. Okijama reportedly felt a physical with the Yankees on February 12th, 2012, before beginning of spring training. So it's possible that Reserve could have interpreted for Okijama in that time between he signed the minor league deal and the start of the camp, but seems unlikely. So what does this mean? We know Missouri graduated high school, or Mizuhara graduated high school in 03 and joined the Fighters in 2013, where he met Otani. In the 10 years between, he was widely reported to have attended college in the U.S. and worked for two different MLB teams, but there is now a gaping hole in that background, I'll say. So,
Might have to find out what exactly was he doing for those 10 years. Because if he
well, this
wasn't
is
at
the
that
thing. Well, this
school
is what
and he didn't work for
this
those
is what
two teams, what was he
explains the
doing?
lack of the background check. This is where it gets fishy. Missouri befriended Mizuhara. I'm going to say it, Mizuhara. It's probably not even close. Befriended Otani starting when the slugger was 19. When he went with him to the Angels and followed him to the Dodgers. He wasn't just an interpreter, he was Otani's personal assistant and one of his best friends. Right? So I think he gave him the 4.5 million to get out of debt. I mean, what's 4.5 million? My light's going out on me. What's 4.5 million to Otani?
Right.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. I mean, it's
Like
it's almost like because of the statement, the story has more questions now than ever before.
it's like Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
Like so the only way he got away with that is if that's his best friend. That's why there was no background check. They're
Right.
not.
So Otani gets over here,
This is my
tells
guy.
Major League Baseball, this is who I want for my
This is my
interpreter. Major League
guy.
Baseball goes, sure, fine, okay, yeah.
You know what I
I
mean?
mean,
But
even
still,
then, shouldn't baseball still look into him? Because what if he just says, "This is my guy," and you find the guy has like some crazy past that you don't want associated
that's
with in
what
the league, and then
happens
you have
when
to
you
tell
don't when
Otani,
the rules apply to everybody.
right?
This kind of stuff happens
Yeah,
because if you're like, look, we get he's your guy, but for him to work for Major League Baseball, so we can protect all players, he has to go through a background check. That's how it works. Sorry, Otani. If you're going to be a Major League Baseball player, this is what your guy has to do if he's going to be with you.
Hmm.
Otherwise, we can't
Yeah.
help you here. And that's where you have to take a stand against people that might be bigger than life at the time and not say, okay, we'll change it for you. Because if they did that background check, regardless of him being his boy or not, they were going to find out that he didn't work for either of those fucking teams, or at least the Red
Yep.
Sox. So
No, the Yankees said he didn't work for them either.
they said it's possible he might have did in spring training, but he got injured for the guy. And the guy, you know what I mean? ESPN
Yeah.
spoke. Oh, so it says the saga became public on March 20th with a bombshell ESPN report alleging that Missouri, Otani's longtime interpreter and friend, had been accused of a massive theft of Otani's funds to cover illegal gambling debts. I don't know what's lost in translation, but when I saw the press conference, it was almost like he was talking about this guy like he wasn't his friend. There was no emotion there, and you couldn't really tell it. And I don't know if that's lost in translation or that's just how their culture is, and they're like, okay, well, this is done. A massive theft of Otani's funds to cover illegal gambling debts and had been fired by the Dodgers. Okay. ESPN spoke to Missouri on March 19th for 90 minutes and laid out the first public version of the story, claiming that Otani paid off his gambling debts via wire transfer to help Missouri make a clean break from gambling. Now, they say, why would a bookie do that? Well, if the bookie knew that he's best friends with Otani, he's like, he'll get the money from him. So they say, why
Hmm.
would a bookie give that guy a $4.5 million credit line? Because he knew who his friend was. That's why. Come on. Like, he give me a break. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Hmm.
why. And, ESPN spoke to Mizuraha, uh, Mizuhara. That's my final answer on how to say that name. On March 19th for 90 minutes and laid out the first public version of the story, claiming that Otani paid off his gambling debts via wire transfer to help him make a clean break from gambling. See, that sounds more plausible to me. The story
Hmm.
didn't last long, though. By the end of the day, he had recanted the whole thing shortly after Otani's attorneys at Burke Bretler LLP released a statement disavowing his story. So as I follow this along, it sounds like that was the arrangement. Now they're changing the story because they didn't like where the light that it put Otani in. In the course of responding to recent media and I don't know why they wouldn't stick with that, right? Because
Hmm.
who's going to kill him for helping out his friend if he could? In the course of responding to recent media inquiries, we discovered that Shohei has become a victim of massive theft, and we're turning the matter over to authorities, the statement read. The change in the story of Otani helped Mizorhai to stole from Otani is difficult to ignore. It's also difficult to accept the explanation that Otani didn't know about the wire transfers from his bank account totaling more than $4 million. In light of all the confusion, MLB announced Friday that they've opened up an investigation of the situation. Since then, we've learned more about him, including apparent inaccuracies on his resume, blah, blah, blah. Though through all of this, he has maintained that he never bet on Missouri. This is where so it's Mizuhara has maintained that he never bet on baseball and that Otani had zero to do with his gambling. He could have bet on other sports. Seems unlikely,
Yeah.
but Pete Rose was a big college basketball gambler and college football, not baseball. So it's possible. I mean, that's where the twist takes a turn for me. Like, I, I guess it's hard for us to understand because we don't make $8 million or
Sure.
200 million. So 4 million missing from your bank account might seem like a couple G's. I mean, I would notice a couple G's too, but it might just seem like it. He might not be managing that. And if this guy had access to like an account that was, he was given access to because he was one of his best friends, his right hand man. I mean, the word personal assistant and interpreter were used. So if they bring this guy in and he says, "This is my personal assistant," and he's coming over from Japan with him, it's his personal assistant, right?
Hmm.
So I guess the Angels didn't do their due diligence. That's what it sounds like.
True. Yeah.
And that, knowing the Angels doesn't surprise me.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. I mean, there's when you read it, you're like, you know, he recanted the story. So in the course of responding to, I mean, the change in his story from Otani helped Mizuhara to, we're just gonna call him Miz, helped Miz change from Otani helped Miz to Miz stole from Otani is difficult to ignore it, and that is that is a fair question of Otani. He helped him, and now he stole it.
Right.
So
So did
was
he?
it?
So there's
Hey,
something
listen,
about Miz.
I'll help you out with like what are you like 500,000 in debt, and then
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Miz
he
probably
said
told
take
him,
it from
"Oh,
there, and then
I need 350." Yeah, and he just
it
went in
became
there and took more.
4.5 million.
Yeah. Ah,
Like because listen, the one thing I know of, I've met some degenerate gamblers. They're not truthful. Pete
oh
Rose
yeah.
not truthful. So
Hmm.
the question is Otani the degenerate gambler? And will he get what everybody always said, a Michael Jordan style cover up? Back in the day, some people say it was because Michael's father got killed. I don't know if the time didn't he. I don't know. Did he leave basketball after his dad's death? Was it or I?
Yes.
So obviously, it would most likely was that. But the rumor was because everybody knows Jordan loves to gamble. It's
Hmm.
a fact. They talked about it in the Tiger Woods um special. They talk Barkley loves to gamble, Jordan loves to gamble. They like to gamble. There's many stories about running into Jordan in the late 90s, early 2000s in Vegas. Okay?
Hmm.
That's fine. Not hating on him for that. But apparently they theorized that became a problem and Jordan decided to become a baseball player. Was kind of a hush hush suspension for him. That's that's the
Yeah,
conspiracy
I
theory.
I remember hearing that like yeah, David Stern kind of basically told him that that's kind of needs to go away for a little bit. And yeah, I remember that story. But
Now,
yeah, uh,
but
who knows?
Otani, I don't know. He gonna go play basketball? Like what's
Right.
gonna he's gonna join the G League? That would be great. If that happened, I would be like, wow. Talk about like the irony here. Um, does he go away for a year and play baseball in Japan? Does it void the
Yeah.
contract? I mean, think of all the merchandise, and I'm taking the side of the conspiracy theorists here, and we'll wrap up. Right, the, of the merchandise, the season ticket sales, the ad time, all of this stuff that Otani has generated for them. Right,
Hmm.
that's gonna be fucking worthless if he ends up getting suspended for a year. Right, and if they
Yeah.
found out he directly bet on baseball, the problem here is betting on the sport, but it's also illegal in California. So that's another problem, right?
Yep.
So is this guy not getting his story straight and he's falling on the sword for Otani?
That's kind of been my point of view with it. Is that clearly, you know, Miz realized
And was he
if
betting
he,
on the Angels? Because we know he'd be losing money on those bets.
yeah,
Did he bet the over under of Anthony
yeah,
Rendon, how many games he would play? And he bet the over on the games. He could have put a big bet on that. Anthony Rendon might have said, like, listen, man, I'm going to play 100 games this year.
hmm
You
yeah.
know, maybe that's why he wanted to leave the
It's
team.
slippery
He's like, this
slope.
fucking guy cost me a $2.5 million bet. I don't want to play with this guy anymore. You know what? I think I've solved it. Anthony Rendon is to blame for this situation. Nobody likes Anthony Rendon. It's all his
I know.
fault.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so many rabbit holes you could go down with this. But
yeah,
I mean, it is weird how he changed his story. I mean, that's
yeah. That doesn't look good for anybody. That you change it that quickly at the point you are, then it's gonna make people question like, was the first statement just you trying to cover yourself? Then you realize you left too many loopholes, so you came up with this story, and now Miz went from saying one thing to something else. Did you guys talk, and maybe you told him like, "Hey man, you do this for me, I'll take care of you when you get out or get past all this." Like there's more questions than anything now, and this story is gonna dominate baseball now. Every time he goes to the plate, people probably boo him because they'll be like, "This guy should be suspended" or whatever. Who knows now? Will we
Mm-hmm.
get other people joining this story randomly? Like, does Miz have a friend who might come out and try to defend him and say, "Oh, Otani knew everything. Otani's the real guy you need to take down"? Like, like you said, this story could go like a million different ways at this point now.
I mean, I don't think they'll ever get to Otani and be able to suspend him.
Yeah, probably.
Because I think there'd be plenty of people that I think this guy, if he didn't do it, or if he did do it, I think this guy will be his fall guy,
True.
and he's gonna pay him in crypto. Like,
Yeah. I mean, Otani definitely would have the most to lose in this story. So
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
oh
you got to
well,
protect him.
I could tell you what, man, this story's not gonna go away until there's a conclusion.
Then the problem's gonna be how long is that going to take? I mean, this has 30 for 30 written all over it now.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's still playing out, but
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And so, yeah, he's the guy, and they're not taking the guy down. So there's that. Listen, everybody said that about Brady. He got suspended. You know, um, what's notable suspensions in sport besides who's the most famous suspension besides Tom Brady recently? Like Mike Tyson?
I mean, you had the Calvin Ridley thing.
Yeah, but he wasn't as accomplished.
He wasn't on like a Brady
Like
level. Yeah,
Mike Vick, right?
and that was pretty high profile. Yeah.
Ron Artest.
Okay. Yeah.
So, um, yeah. So Alex Karras, remember him? He was wasn't he on the show Webster? Um,
That name is familiar. I couldn't tell you what show it
well,
was, but
he's
I
a
have heard
long
the name.
time out. So he was suspended indefinitely for gambling on NFL games and associating with undesirable persons. But reinstated after one season, he returned to the league and played until 1970, becoming a popular action figure in films like Blazing Saddles and Porky's. Paul Horning, he was suspended in 1963 indefinitely for gambling NFL games associating with undesirable persons. Let's just say mafia. But reinstated after one season, well liked Horton continued to prosper in the NFL as inducted into the Hall of Fame. So there are, Adam Pac-Man Jones not gambling. Dante Starworth, that was messed up. I mean, he killed
Mm-hmm.
someone, so he should have been suspended. Plaxico Burress, that was high profile. But like I would say, like the highest profile suspensions, though, you know, Tom Brady, right? If Shohei got
Yeah.
suspended, Tom Brady's probably the highest profile suspension that's ever happened as far as level of play. By the way, I want to bring this up and then we'll close it out. People jumping on this right now, this is irony at its best. Okay. The Astros general manager, okay, talking
Mm-hmm.
about Otani. Have you heard what he said?
I haven't, but anybody associated with the Astros might want to probably keep quiet with all the
Yeah.
stuff that they had. With all the stuff that they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm doing it right now. So, uh, here it is. Um, this I forget what it was, but he was talking about how it could be a problem, and it's one of the biggest scandals since like the Black Sox scandals, and you know, on, and I'm just reading it, and it's the irony's rich,
Yeah.
real rich. So I'm just trying to find it on here because it was definitely recent. It was their Astros. I'm trying to find it.
Okay.
Otani. And then we'll end with this, but Otani gambling. Trying to find it. Oh, yeah, I'm trying. Oh, there it is. So I know. Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Okay, here it is. Yeah. So I just can't believe that this guy would have the balls to talk about someone cheating. Like the Astros, and that's what I mean by people piling on. Like the guy's gonna
Hmm.
bring, oh well, you're cheating. Um, you know, this is such a scandal. And then I saw people in the comments like banging trash can lids together. you know, I mean, so and he deserves it. Like, you need to shut the hell up.
I mean, it's kind of like
Yeah,
most said. This is baseball. Like, there's always some issues with baseball, whether it's steroids or now it's Otani, trash cans. The Red Sox had a thing with like the Apple devices or whatever. Like this is a part of baseball at this point.
yeah,
Scandals.
yeah. I mean,
So,
it's not. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's so stupid.
yeah,
And baseball needs to get a hold of it. Yeah, like I even googled it, and then like there's pictures of Otani and Pete Rose next to each other. I'm like, give me a break. So is shit, and this is the Los Angeles Times. So we
yeah,
can get out of here. Anyway, that's it, right? You want to close things up? I guess we got
yes,
the full hour and a half in. So
yeah, yeah. To appreciate everybody who tuned in. You know, this is Integrity Sports Network. If you are new to the page and everything like that, make sure you like, subscribe, share, follow, all that good stuff. Like I said, it was just myself and Godfrey, but I thought it was a really good show. So, I mean, Godfrey, if you have anything you want to add before we get out of here,
don't rush to judgment on things like this with like Otani, because you could be made a fool of, whether no matter what side you're on. Just let things come out, and baseball season's going to start soon, and you know I'm probably more excited about the NFL draft, to be honest. So I mean,
I'm kind of
you
right
know,
there with you.
so I mean, as much as I like my Phillies, and I'll be there Sunday, more excited about the draft. So that's that. Got some work to do, baseball.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably a perfect way to put it because I'm the same way. But make sure you'll stay tuned to Integrity Sports. Got plenty of shows for you. So until next week, where hopefully we'll have more people in here. It's myself and Godfrey. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we will see you next week. All right, we're out of here.
See ya.